on the other one, you bastard!
Magic Square and New Age, two titans locked in an everlasting battle. Well, not everlasting, eventually they'll get taken down by Hasbro like every other third party on the planet, but the competition between the two does seem to be fierce. Except, is it really? In my mind, it's a pretty clear-cut case of who is better. New Age just has way better materials and transformations. And yeah, Magic Square figures look better on a shelf, but Legends figures aren't about shelves. They're about quick pick-up and play sessions, and New Age just nails that. Magic Square just fails in a few key categories: the build quality and the transformations. The transformations aren't the main point of Magic Square toys, it is the display options. And that is a bit of a misguided design philosophy, and I feel there is no better example to display such than with today's topic. In vehicle mode, not a lot of Artfire's flaws become apparent, but there is one that I will get to that pretty much renders this entire alt mode frustrating. But first off, it looks like a pretty damn neat Artfire. Yes, the details are minimal, but it is still pretty nice. Of course, it uses that Magic Square plastic that everybody knows and hates, but it still does what it can at the scale. Full disclosure, stickers have been applied. I did not apply them, the previous person who owned this did. This is a second-hand copy that I got on Facebook. Again, buy things on Facebook, you get some great deals. That's not an endorsement, that's just honestly how I get a lot of my second-hand figures. But looking at it, yeah, it's a very simple Legend scale Inferno. Obviously, there are going to be plenty of sacrifices that have been made here, such as the incredibly visible legs and arms, but that was part of the G1 toy, that's part of the Earthrise version, and that's obviously going to be part of Artfire here. And looks-wise, it looks pretty nice, especially on camera. In person, that plastic really makes it look cheap, but on camera, it does look quite nice. And pinned wheels, that's always a plus. We'll always give credit to pinned wheels. However, there are a few issues with it that just massively bring this alt mode down. First up, the cab does not lock into place at all, it just flops around. And when that cab is the only thing keeping the wheels at the front flush, that's a bit of a problem. Now, this was also the case with Ultra Magnus, but Ultra Magnus had a much smaller cab, so it was acceptable. On something this big and something that becomes the chest, nah. Secondly, the ladder connecting system is just a complete joke. It is completely segmented with this hinge on the top here, and it looks pretty ugly. Third, no rotation back here. I would normally be able to forgive that, but this is a pretty expensive figure. On what is essentially supposed to be a $50 Legends figure, they should have had a rotating ladder section. But the ladder itself is the absolute worst part of the figure. It is horrible. It is made of this really cheap plastic that feels like it's gonna snap at any second. I hate this ladder. I hate it so bad. It's not even pegged in properly. They just come apart super easily. And I'm not gonna put much stress on that because I don't want to break the plastic. But like, everything is pegged together pretty awfully. And even putting it back just, feels awful because everything rubs up against each other. It feels like it's gonna break. Ugh, such a bad ladder. I don't think I've ever come across a worse ladder on a Legends figure than this. In fact, I don't think I've ever come across a ladder worse than this on a Transformer, period. It really sucks. This could have been amazing, and I'm sure if New Age does their version, it will be amazing. But as it stands, it's a lot of the same Magic Square hallmarks. Terrible plastic, lack of locking tabs, weird gaps that just seem out of place, and then some new stuff like this ladder. That is just not okay on any kind of figure. In general, I feel that Magic Square has flops like these because they just don't think things out. They just kind of pump out Legends without really giving them the time to bake in the oven, and this is a prime example of that. Anywho, size-wise, he is 10 centimeters long, 3.5 centimeters wide, including the bits at the back here, and roughly 3.9 centimeters tall. And for those curious, the ladder extends to roughly 17 centimeters, although you really don't want to do this because, as I said, as you push it back, everything rubs up against each other, and one of those days, those plastic struts are gonna break. Anyway, size-wise, here he is next to a standard Legion figure, a standard Legends figure, a standard Earthrise Micromaster, and crumbs. So the vehicle mode is pretty compromised. I wouldn't say it's terrible, but it definitely is compromised. But the transformation, oh dear lord. Might as well just get the ladder out of the way for later on, bring this section down to the front and fold up the wheels into the back, like so. Then untab the arm sections here and also the back section there, and that is the main problem here. So remember how Earthrise Grapple had only a double hinge that folded in nice and neatly? Yeah, Magic Square didn't think to do that. Nor do they copy the immensely awesome Masterpiece transformation because they had to do their own thing, and the one time they didn't plagiarize the transformation, they decided to make this. To make way, you push that down, fold in these panels here, and then somehow get all of those to push past all of that into the backpack whilst these fold back all the way through, keeping it together. It's not hard per se, but it feels so bad. Like, that has got to be up there in the top 10 worst transformation steps I've done. Not worst transformations overall, although Magic Square definitely has some of those, but definitely individual steps. Anyway, you separate the legs by kind of shifting them up like that and opening them. Rotate the feet down, fold in the stabilizer, and pull that down. I don't get why they keep using these pull-down systems. It's not professional. Fold down, pull down. And also pull up with the arms here. They really like these pulling systems with these sliding rails. As I've said before, sliding rails are one of my worst transformation steps things, but nothing compares to that hinge nightmare. Anyway, at the back here, these untab from the shoulders, and then they tab into the shoulders again on the sides here. After getting the arms into place, you bring up the wings as you normally do and bring forward the gun and rotate the head, and you are done. And yeah, it's a very lovely Artfire. Yes, a lot of the details are stickered, which is a complete bummer. They should have been tamper-graphed. But what we get here does look solid. They haven't done much to the chest here, and it is a bit plain, but I do like the bulky nature to it. It's shameless, but it's nice. And the proportions in general are nice. But the problem is getting here is frustrating as hell. Of course, there's not going to be much paint. You've got paint on the windows, paint on the shoulders, and the face. And speaking of, the head is actually pinned in for once. For once, you can't just pull it off, which is something a lot of Magic Square releases do. As are the hands. The hands are actually clipped in, although you don't get any wrist rotation as a result, which is fine, it's fine. It is a remarkably clean robot. The aesthetic is lovely, but on a Legends figure, you can sacrifice elements of the aesthetic to deliver a better transformation, and they didn't do that here. Magic Square to me feels like your KFCs, or your X-Transbots, or even your fans toys, minus some of the visual tweaks. They focus on the robot mode and the vehicle modes individually. The transformation is merely a means to an end, and that's not Legends at its heart. That is one of the reasons why Magic Square continuously fails in comparison to the New Age counterparts. Like, they're doing a hauler, eventually, and I'm not getting it. I love hauler, but I'm skipping it because this mold is a nightmare to transform. With those hinges, it's not difficult, but it's frustrating. Anywho, articulation's pretty simple. You've got the pinned head this time, although it is ridiculously loose and I'm worried it's going to fall off eventually. Ball joints at the arms here. Biceps rules that are a little tight but get the job done. And thankfully he has biceps rules because this is not Hot Soldiers. 90-degree elbow. Nice waist swivel, which is a lovely touch. Ball joints at the hips that get a nice outward motion. You wouldn't expect it, but there is the cut there. Thigh swivel, of course. A 90-degree at the knee, and ball-jointed feet with rather large feet that actually get plenty of motion. I do like that. And then the sliding rail actually allows you to move it up a bit as well, even if it does gimp the knee. So the articulation is pretty damn good. That's something I'll give it credit for. There's a lot of things I'll give this figure credit for, but the transformation just is not one of them. Anyway, size-wise, he is 5 centimeters by 10.3 centimeters. And size-wise, here he is next to a standard Legion figure, a standard Legends figure, a standard Earthrise Micromaster, and Crumbs. So if I had to pull a Bobby Skullface and choose a recommendation rating, I do not recommend him. If you absolutely need an Artfire or a Grapple and Inferno in your collection, maybe he'll do as a stand-in, but I've never subscribed to the idea of having a stand-in figure. I've just subscribed to the idea of good toys selling themselves. To me, toys shouldn't be gap fillers, they should just be pretty good. And this feels like a gap filler. This feels like a lazy release that just meant to fill a gap. And I don't like that. There are things to like here, but they are overshadowed by some massive issues. Mainly this. Mainly that. Perhaps I was a bit too harsh on this figure back in 2019 with my worst of the year list, but it's still pretty bad. The robot mode is lovely, and there are elements of the vehicle mode to enjoy, but that transformation, it's probably the worst the company has ever done. I just can't recommend this. The whole point of buying a Legends collection is to have small figures that you can mess with on your desk. It's not to have a huge shelf of them. If you want a huge shelf of figures, then Masterpiece or Chug are much better options, because they have a much better presence. Legends is about the fun factor. It's why you don't see so much toxicity in the community, and half the time Magic Square gets that, and the other half they don't. And the real sad thing is that lately, they're seeming to get it less and less, and it does have me a bit worried for the future of the company. But tomorrow is quite the opposite. I saw such failures in a company, but recently they've really risen above it. And it was one figure that truly made me realize that. So let's take a look at that tomorrow. But for now, I think it's time to take a break from filming. I don't know, man, this figure's really taken it out of me. That transformation is just bad. Still, at least that's the worst Magic Square has ever done. I mean, it's not like there's a transformation that's even more—